Oh, we're on the air. Are we on the there? He's not listening to me. According to this, I've got 1 more minute. Why are you putting me on the air? I've already got, don't even watch. Close your eyes for a minute. Sorry. Might as well have a little fun, shouldn't we? Just a little bit along the way. Oh, man. What was the deal Dwayne sent me? He was complaining about the people shooting fireworks near his house. The other day, afraid he was going to catch his Christmas decorations on fire. Oh, wow. So glad you're here. So glad Bill came in. I hope you've had a great day. It was raining a little bit a while ago. It's kind of nice. Yeah. You know, I went to pick up Paula this evening. Went to pick her up a while ago to go get something to eat before we came down here. And so I left here and it was like 88 degrees outside or something like that. Pushing 90 degrees, maybe 88 or 89 degrees outside on my car. Before I got home, it was in the 70s. Can you believe that? In the 20-minute drive home, I got under the clouds and the rain came down. It was like 73 degrees outside. Just kind of, is that only in Oklahoma? Maybe other states say the same thing. I don't know. I'm glad you're here this evening. It is a good evening. We'll have a prayer in just a moment, and then we'll get into our study for this evening. I don't know of anything new immediately to add to our prayer list this evening, unless you've got something immediately we need to add to it. I don't know anything new outside of some of the announcements we made Sunday. Yeah, Marty?
That infant child,
Right.
he has, I guess they found something to stay down. He's getting the pound, and things are looking up.
Okay, we had mentioned his cousin's child that was doing so poorly, not able to keep food down and so forth, and they found something, he said, if you couldn't hear him, found something that's working, he's gaining weight and so forth, so sounds like maybe they're past the crisis on this for this child, so that is really good news. Appreciate that. We mentioned him in our prayers and so forth recently. I apologize. Anyway, let's pause a moment. Let's have a prayer together, and then we'll get into our study this evening as we continue to look at these strategies for success in our lives. So let's bow for a prayer. Mighty God and Father, again, thank you so much for the time that we can be together. We're thankful for the rain that's come this evening, the cooled things off, changed our temperatures a little bit, and Father, just the wonder of things around us. We're thankful every day to see these things. And we thank you for our time together. There are those on our hearts and minds at this time that special need of our prayers. We think of Bill Fleming as he's striving to recover from his fall and his broken hip. We're thankful for the news on the baby that things are better there. And Father, for others that are dealing with challenges, and we've got those with chronic problems right here among us, help us to be encouraging and helpful as they strive to deal with their issues, and help us to be an encouragement and a help to them along the way in everything. We're thankful for this congregation and the family that we share here, Father. May we recognize how blessed we really are, and may we let that light shine and people see in us truly what it means to be your children. And we do offer this prayer through Jesus our Savior. Amen. If you remember last week, anybody still remember last week? If you remember last week, we began a series of lessons that I call Strategies for Success. Might should call them Strategies for Success in Living, or Christian living in particular. But just, what it is. We're taking verses out of the book of Matthew, out of the Gospel of Matthew, taking some of those verses and statements that Jesus made. From those, we can find some really applicable things for living our lives in a very positive way. I don't want to do injustice to something that Jesus said, but to draw from what he states, something that we can be and that we can use. Last week I didn't give you a whole lot of fill-ins to put in there. This week there are many more there, so you might have to pay attention a little bit more in class this week so you'll be ready for the final exam, or at least the midterm when it comes around. So seriously, If you want to, you're welcome to fill those in. Information will be on the screen, as well as I've got it in front of me. I like to cheat, so I've got it right here in front of me. Might as well if I get a chance. So let's think about that. Last week, we began with chapter 3 and verse 15 to basically about righteousness and to apply righteousness in our lives and do righteousness. This week, we look at what Jesus states in Matthew 4, verses 18 and 19, and the idea of becoming. While he doesn't, in Matthew's account, he doesn't use the word become, he does in Mark's account that I will make you to become. It is an inference that is found within the phrase and from the words that are used there. Notice what he says. We look at Matthew 4, verses 18 and 19. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That's where we look at it this evening. And we can point to his drawing of other disciples, but he's more explicit in this case of what he's doing. I will make you, and Mark adds into it the word become, and that has to do with the language they use. I think it's an inference that's within Matthew's account as well. It says, I will make you become a part of it. So I use the term be becoming. There's a question that we might use to begin the class as we look at ourselves. We think about ourselves and our own lives. And you look at your own life and you ask yourself the question, and I ask you, how do you see your life in terms of becoming what you believe you can and should be? Does everybody in here feel they are what they can be and what they should be? Kind of a loaded question, isn't it? Nobody wants to raise up their hand. Everybody wants to say, well, no, I could be better than I am. I could be more than I am. I should be something. I think we are what we are. And we are all in process, and that's what it comes down to. Are we what we should be? Maybe for the moment. Are we what we can be? Maybe for the moment. I had a ninth grade teacher who invited us back to his house a year or two later when I was in high school. A bunch of us that were in a class together went to his house, and he asked us a question. He said, do we always do our best given all the circumstances that are around us? I think I've shared that with you before. And that's an interesting question, because when you take in all of the circumstances, does that mean your bit of knowledge, how you feel that day? There are all kinds of circumstances that come into play. Did you do your best in spite of being lazy? Whatever it is. And so his idea was that generally speaking, we are inclined to do what we feel we are capable of doing within the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And so maybe there's something to be said about that. And I think about that in terms of we are where we are, we do what we do. Could we make better choices? Could we choose to do better things? Could we improve ourselves? Absolutely we can. And that's what this gets down to in the question of be becoming. Or are we satisfied with where we are? So I want us to think about a few things this evening, and then we'll look at a few questions in this. As we look at the progression of life in general, what we typically find is the three aspects of life, and they're not very accurate in that regard, but three aspects of life. One is the upward growth, another is the point of plateau, and the other is the downward slide. I added the slide part to it, because if you're going downward, you might as well slide on the way. But the upward growth, the plateau, and then the downward slide or spiral or whatever you want to call that. Typically, we think of the upward growth as being at what time in life? Childhood, when they're growing and learning, they're getting physically larger, developing in that way, intelligence growing. They're eating that Wonder Bread, building strong bodies in 12 ways. I've always wondered, what are those 12 ways? I don't think they ever said. But we think of childhood as that time of rapid growth and development in so many ways. They go from being tiny babies that know nothing at birth, it seemed like, to becoming loudmouth, obnoxious young people. But that upward growth and all the learning that's involved in that, nobody even smiled at that, just let it slide by as if it wasn't even there. No stand-up, Bill said, so we'll just leave that alone. but that we understand that childhood. The plateau, there is no real plateau. But there comes that point in life, I think we look at life as if it's in the midst of I don't know what you call it outside of plateau, a point at which you're kind of level out and moving. Yes, you're either going up or down in life, but it is kind of that up and down. But you're not seeing the dramatic changes. You're not seeing dramatic changes in life as much. You feel fairly constant, and I'm not sure exactly when that begins or when that ends in life, but that plateau, that young to mid-adulthood time in life, it's that time in life before they start calling you sir and opening doors for you, and that time when they still expect you to open the doors for them. That's kind of where I'm talking about. We see that in life. And then the downward slide, that's all you old people, not me, but all you old people. Those senior years when we feel like we're kind of moving ever closer, and we begin to think about latter ends of life a little bit more than we did much earlier in life. We begin to see and mark the changes that are coming along in life, and you begin to know your doctor by his first name. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. That's how we see typically the progressions of life. Spiritually, biblically, that is completely untrue. Spiritual progression is always intended to be an upward growth. There is no plateau and there is no downward spiral. Yes, there come points in life where you're a little bit down. You were giving me this a while ago. Yeah, I think we find those in spiritual life as well. And we find those times, and maybe we have some physical or even mental difficulties that cause problems in that regard. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just our general prospect of life is about improvement. And I think even in our physical lives, we long for and we search for that continued progressive improvement in life. And also, that's why I say these three are not accurate when you get into the spiritual life. And Jesus here is while he is engaging physical life, he is really talking about their development before God and the spiritual aspect of those things in that regard. So, what do we do about it? How do we handle this kind of thing? We look at the fishermen. We look at the call of the fishermen. We look at what Jesus is telling them to do and to be. We look at this and their willingness to drop what they're doing and go and follow him. We see the others who do the same thing. There's some of the same category we've been looking at on Sunday morning in Mark. And I didn't mention to remind you that all adult Bible classes will be in here Sunday morning. We will not have a regular 2 adult classes Sunday morning. We'll have one class here in the auditorium Sunday morning with our guest speaker. So plan to be in here Sunday morning. Back to this. But what are we going to do about it? Once we recognize we're supposed to do this, how do we then see our lives? Well, I think we respond to life. I give you 4 categories. Now we could break it down further, but 4 general categories. Number 1 is, I am where I am and unwilling to change. I'm too old, too stubborn, too smart, too dumb, or whatever we might say. We can put a 2 in front of it. Anyway, we generally don't describe it that way. Everybody in here is saying, boy, that's kind of rude, isn't it? But isn't that the response? That's the response that comes out that way. Basically, we look at, that's not my thing. This is where I am. That's not for me. Regardless of what it is, if you get a grasp on what I'm saying in that, it's that hesitance to move out or move forward from where you are in your life, especially your spiritual life. The second category would be, I would change my life for the better if I knew how and had the courage. This is the uninvestigative. This is the person that says, boy, I would make my life better if I just had any idea how to do it. And if I had the courage to do it. In other words, if I knew what to do and how to do it, I would make changes in my life. A lot of changes are pretty simple in life, but we hide from them because we want to say, I really don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything about it. That's what sometimes comes out. I would change my life if I just knew how. But then we avoid knowing how. Think about that. Well, I shouldn't have gone that far with that one. The third category is this one. I do not like my life. And I am seeking the means to become something better in my life. In other words, I don't like where I am, and I'm trying to figure out how to change it. I'm working on it. I'm doing this. If I don't like what I know, I'm studying more. If I don't like what I'm doing, I'm looking for something else that I can do. If I don't like my job, I'm hunting a new job. If my wife doesn't like me, I'm trying to make myself more likable. Oh, just wondered if you were still paying attention to that. Anyways, seriously, it's a point of I'm dissatisfied, and maybe I do not like my life is not the best way to put it, but that gets attention. There is a dissatisfaction, and I want to make changes, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Then the fourth category simply is this. I'm blessed in my life. I know it, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm trying to keep that going, and I'm moving to even better things. We sing the song from time to time, I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Or Paul's statement we are being moved from glory to glory. It's that idea of I'm trying to be even more than I am. I want to be more tomorrow than I am today, regardless of everything else that might be going on in life. So I look at those. Those are kind of four categories of life, and about the question of this becoming. How are we going to respond? You can see when Jesus comes along and he says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. We say, well, no, wait a minute. I'm just where I am, and I'm going to be fine where I am. I'm not going to make any real changes in my life, no matter what anybody tells me. No matter what the preacher says, even if he is the smartest, brightest person in the whole area, then I'm still not going to make any changes. Even though he can show me what I need to be, I'm still not going to make any changes. Kind of the way some people approached Jesus, wasn't it? They were not going to make any changes. Just something you wanted to add? Go ahead.
When do we challenge ourselves? And when do we know what our limitations are? Let's take that exercise.
That's a very good point. How do you know what you can do unless you undertake trying to do it? Where do we know our limits are? Where do we know so forth? I made the statement before, the weightlifter never knows how much weight he can lift until he breaks, until he falls with the weights. And it's kind of, we never know what we really can do until we push our limits beyond. And we are sometimes hesitant to push our limits, so it's a very, very good point. And how would people, some people responded to Jesus that way. I'm not going to make a change. I like where I am, and I'm not going to change. Others would say, well, I would change my life. Remember those who came after him? And he says, first I got to go take care of something at home first. I got to take care of this and do that. Then there were others that came to him just begging, show me something. Show me something, Lord. I don't like my life. I don't like where I am. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Remember as Peter fell before Jesus in the fishing boat after he pulled in all those fish, and he said, depart from me, for I am a sinful man. And then he left what he was doing and went with Jesus. That's what we see. I don't really like some of the things in my life, and I want them changed. Or others that look and say, man, my life is so good, and I want to keep it that way, and I want to help it grow and develop even more. So that's what we're looking at, and Jesus offered those. What was it? John says that I've come that you might have life. Verse 10 of John chapter 10, I've come that you might have life and have it abundantly, even growing. So that's a great thought in that regard. So this is, we fit into those, somewhere in that mix is where we fit, maybe not exactly in one or the other, and we don't like to see ourselves in the first two, and maybe we align in some senses more with the number 3 or 4 in that list. So what do we need to do? If we're going to answer the call, if we're going to answer a call to meet a new challenge, one of the great quandaries we may face in our life, when we face that quandary in life, what does it mean? It means to us. It means we've got to step out from our known, our comfortable environment. We've got to get outside of our comfort zone a little bit. You've got to push yourself a little bit. If you're going to answer that or meet a new challenge, you've got to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. Got to try something a little bit new, a little bit harder in that regard. We've got to step into the yet unknown. Most of us don't like to go into the unknown because we're fearful of whether we'll know how to act, what to say, what to do, whether we'll be able to handle it. When you go into the unknown, you just don't you just don't know. You don't know what's coming your way. You don't know whether you can deal with it. You don't know whether you're prepared for it. And that is a challenging, that is a almost hurtful kind of feeling that you have in life. So it's tough to go into those circumstances. Some of you are probably a little more adventurous and you're ready to jump on things a little more quickly than others are, even where it is unfamiliar, and that is a good quality. And then typically it means that we begin to walk by faith and not by sight. We're going to go? Let's go. I think it's interesting that when Joshua had the children of Israel ready to cross the Jordan River, they're ready to cross that Jordan River, and it was swollen up. When they get ready to cross the Jordan River, do you remember when the water parted? Now Moses, when he raised his rod over the sea, the waters parted, and they were able to go in on dry land. You remember when the waters parted when Joshua led them to the Jordan River? You go back and read that. Yeah, when the priests, or the Levites carrying the ark, stepped to the water. When they put their feet down, it was kind of like as the feet came down to where the water was, the water pulls back. It's kind of like that, it's that Indiana Jones thing, you remember, from the Last Crusade when you can't see, you think, what's he going to do here? We can't see that. Looks like he's just going to step out onto air. That's the idea of walking by faith. You're stepping out there because you trust the one who says, go ahead. God told Moses, why are you standing here crying? Move forward. Hold your rod out over to the sea, and so forth and so on. It is that idea of stepping out into that unknown, into that unfamiliar, walk by faith, trusting God that it's going to be right, and walk by faith, not by sight. And of course, that's from 2 Corinthians 5:7, as we've got up there on that. All right, let me take a breath here. Somebody need to add something at this point. We've got questions later, but if you're comfortable with this so far, this is the idea of becoming, and Jesus calling them to be becoming. I love that word, to be becoming. I look in the mirror every day and I say, that guy is really becoming an old, haggard-looking thing. Anyway, seriously. Okay, yes, sir. Very good. I think that's a wonderful point. He knew they were fishermen. He knew their skills. And he plays upon that and to use those skills that they knew to put into application. I think that goes well with Romans 12, and he talks about people having differing abilities to put them to use. Put them to use. And he would use them. We all used in perhaps different ways. If he was calling you today, you were at your job, he might not say, I'll make you a fisher of men. Those of you classroom teachers, we've got some classroom teachers and former classroom teachers in here that say, and I'll make you to teach like you've never taught before, with values you've never taught before. I don't know what he'd say, something like that. But play on words, use your skills, and so forth. I think that's something we really need to think about personally, and I appreciate what you're saying, is looking at ourselves and what are my skills? What is my skill set? And how can those be put to use for the Lord? We use them a lot in professions. We use them a lot in family. Can we use them, and how can we use what we know and know how to do in the service of the Lord? That's a great question to put to ourselves, and that goes along with the idea of becoming. Okay? If I miss somebody, make sure you wave at me awfully big. Okay, very good. So, as Jesus addressed the fishermen, he was calling on to follow him in becoming, and I said, as Mark 1:17 says, this was something they yet did not know, but as you're pointing out, he uses a familiar analogy. To them, fishing was a familiar analogy. But notice beyond that, the promising effect. I will make you a fisher of men. You're not just going to pull old slimy, scaly fish out of the water anymore. We're going to talk about you're going to affect people's lives in a big way. There is a promising effect on life and on people in that regard. And that's what I was talking about. How can we use what we have been using? Maybe we use it to make money in a job or a profession. How can we use the skills that we've learned here to serve the Lord? Sometimes we think, well, I can't get up and preach. I can't lead a song. Maybe I'm not even comfortable getting up leading a prayer in a church service, or that's not the thing for me. Why are we limiting our viewpoint to just what we do in an assembly? You know, let's see beyond just what we do in the assembly, the promising effect on people and on their lives and so forth. And then he is calling on them to have a personal involvement. I will make you to become. I will make you. That's individual and plural. You know, you is one of those interesting words. It can be singular and it can be plural. I make you fishers of men. And so you be becoming in that regard. So Jesus gives them that, applies that in that way, and it gives it a ring that draws on them and also incites them in a good way. Let me give you a couple more thoughts, and then we'll go to the questions. We need to see our lives, if we're going to be becoming, we need to see our lives in the likeness of a quest. We don't have to be Don Quixote. We don't have to joust at windmills or something like that. We can sing the impossible dream if we want to, but it's not impossible. We need to see our lives like a quest, something we are striving to accomplish. It may be small. It doesn't have to be some earth-shaking, life-changing deal for us all. It can just be something very small. Giving a can of food to a hungry individual, you know. Be the encourager. Isn't that a great thought? Being an encourager. Everybody likes encouragement. Being the encourager in whatever way we can, so forth. We need to see life as an adventure of learning and developing who we can be. I think we need to be looking for what we can develop and improve and change in our lives. We need to look for those things that can be improved in our lives. Sometimes we need help seeing them. Sometimes we need to draw upon somebody else to say, you know, do you think I could use that? Is there something I could put into practice with that? How can I use that? Is there something there? You know, marriage is one of the marriage and child rearing. I use those a lot because those are some of the greatest learning experiences in the world. And they're very personal. When you get married, you learn about living with somebody like you've never learned it before. You know, I think there's something, you can grow up in a house that's full of women if you're a guy, like I did. I know there were only 3, but it seemed like 300. You can grow up in a house full of girls, but you don't know anything about living with a girl until you get married. The only thing you know about living with a girl when you're growing up with sisters is they're not nice. I'm just kidding. But you learn so much more when you're living in that kind of proximity with someone. Learning and developing who we can be. Same thing about having children. You can know, everybody knows everything about rearing children until they have one. You have one, everything's out the window and starts all over again. We are to be people who are transforming. Romans 12 and verse 2. It's the idea of transforming our lives. Be not conformed to this world, but be, what does he say? Transformed. That's changed from one to another. And thus, that's what we're talking about, becoming. We are thus becoming something in our lives. One more thought in this before we get to the questions is measuring how well we are doing. You know, how well are we doing? We need to see what we are doing by seeing it in relation to where we have been and where we are and where we are trying to be. Did I say that right? Yeah, something like that. Where we are and where we are trying to be. I didn't read it. I need to look there and read it. A good example is the Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 3. He says, here's where I've been. This is what I was. And this is what I've become. I threw all that out. And then he comes back and he says, but I'm not done yet. I don't count myself to have apprehended. I'm not finished with my race. Even though he gets to 2 Timothy 4 and he says, I fought a good fight and I finished the course, he knows he's coming to the end right then. But you go to Philippians 3, he says, I'm not done yet. I've still got some things yet to do. And isn't it interesting that even there in 2 Timothy 4, when he talks about, I've finished the course, I've kept the faith, henceforth there is laid up for me that crown of righteousness, he goes on to say, but by the way, Timothy, when you come pick up that cloak, send Mark, I have need of him, bring that cloak, bring the papers with you. Sounds like he's still got a few more things he's trying to do before he's done. As the old track coach used to tell us, too many races are lost at the end because you slack at the end. He said, you want to turn around and see where everybody else is. You slow yourself down just a little bit, enough to lose the race. He says, don't lose it at the end. That's the time you're putting out the best, the strongest effort you got in the race about you. So my track coach didn't know much, but he did. I think he was right about that part of it. Yes, sir.
First two words from the Lord to them was follow me. So you have to have that willingness,
Okay.
commitment to what he's offering you to do.
Okay. You don't become unless you've got something to follow and a direction to go, and that's right. He says, you follow me. And what is it Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11:1? Be followers of me as I am of Christ. See, that's the idea. You got something to follow to give you the direction, point you where you need to be, give you what you need to know, help you to become what you need to be. All right. Thoughts or something in that line before we... Anybody still awake? All I hear is snoring. Good. All right. Let's go to... I'm sorry. Is everybody in a good mood tonight? Good mood, good mood, good mood. Excellent mood. Okay, all right, stay with it then. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's see what we can do. That's not stand up, by the way, Bill. That was... No, I said I don't know when that point is. You may still be up here on the plateau. How about that? Not Bill. You're in that. You're in the spiral, man. You're circling the drain. I'm thinking no. There's always somebody that wants to take it that way, isn't there? Okay. Oh man, just kidding. I said that's a perception, and it was wrong. Didn't I say that? Okay, very good. All right, good. All right, question number 1. Well, we've already kind of answered this, or I have, but you can't remember that. That was probably 30 minutes ago. When are we most tuned to the prospect of becoming in our spiritual lives? When are we most tuned to it? Now, notice I said our spiritual lives. It doesn't say that in the question, but I added it in. When are we most tuned to the prospect of becoming in our spiritual lives? When? When we're happy? That's a good answer. When we're happy. Do what? Okay. When you're just an initial learner, maybe just being baptized, just becoming a Christian, you're excited, and I think the happy goes into that real well. And all, when you're just grabbing hold of things and so forth, then you're starting to say, wait, man, I don't know that. There's more to learn. There's things I need to learn. But the opposite end of that is when we stop becoming and just are. And that's the dangerous place to be. But that's when we're most tuned, isn't it? You think about that. You think about when you were, well, a lot of you didn't grow up like I did. I grew up Sunday school. Man, I was in Sunday school, I think before I could walk and talk and anything else. They shoved me. My mother wanted to get rid of me at any chance she could. But I sat in those Sunday school classes. Man, we learned those Bible stories. We learned to sing the songs and all of that. And some of you did the same sort of thing. And so we it was fun. It was exciting. I even liked Wednesday night Bible class. You know, you go to Wednesday night Bible class, and we'd go up the old stairs to the old divided auditorium. What was the old auditorium in that building? Been divided up into classrooms. Sit in that class, and we'd get a Bible story and learn those things. I always liked it. It was fun. It was fun. Besides, on Wednesday night, Bible class started at 7:30. We didn't get out to 8:30. We didn't get home till 9. I didn't have to go to bed at my bedtime. That was the best part of the whole evening. I got to stay up till at least 9 o'clock on Wednesday night. Whew, what a blast. Okay. When we are new, when it's new, when we're just beginning to learn, and there seems like the whole world is opening up in front of us. It's like a child that learns to walk and gets into the kitchen and opens every cabinet and pulls out everything that's in the cabinets in there. It's an exciting world to that child. And I think that's when we're most tuned to the prospect of becoming, or when you first realize I can be something. Number 2, unless somebody wants to add something to that. Number 2, why? Why do we need to be becoming. Why not just leave us alone? Because you're not what? Okay. I think, don't we consider that in most every other aspect of our life? Try to work towards being a little better at what we do? Generally speaking, don't we? Yeah? Okay. I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay. Okay. In our military, we constantly fit our servicemen and women to be able to do whatever might be coming their way. And the very idea that goes back to some of the, like the Boy Scouts, is working to be prepared for whatever's coming your way. Isn't that why Paul says, take unto you the whole armor of God? Because there are things coming your way and you start working to that end. We need to be becoming, because we don't always know what's coming our way, and we got to be prepared for whatever eventuality is coming our way. I think that makes a certain degree of sense, just generally speaking. Was that your adversary, the devil, is what? A roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. You've got to be ready for him at any point and any way. We need to be becoming, partly because the world needs it, because we need it, and it is what we are about and supposed to be. All right, simple enough. All right, third question. What are some of the things that stand in the way when we are challenged to be becoming, to becoming? What stands in our way? Ourselves? That's probably 90%, maybe 95%, maybe 99% of the thing is we stand in our own way. Why do we get in the way? If we know that's what we need to be doing, why do we get in the way of ourselves and wanting to do something, to do that, to develop that? Why do we do that? You say what? Pride? Yeah, good. If I don't know it, I don't want anybody to know that I don't know it, and so I'm just going to stick with what I know. Oh, don't know. Boy, isn't that the case? That's kind of a backward logic, but that's the way it is. Somebody said fear or something a while ago. Did you say fear? Okay. I think that's legitimate. I think that's right. We fear what we might be getting into. Will I be ready for this? Will I be able to handle this? I'm not sure. Certain in that. There was something else I heard. Did you say something, Blue? Or okay. I thought I heard something else. Yeah, but it comes back to self, doesn't it? It's almost always something more internal within us that hinders us from doing it. Yes, it faces outward and what other people see and so forth in us, but those are some of the things that stand in the way of our becoming, because especially if we become comfortable. If we become comfortable. Whatever our situation in life, if we do it long enough, after a while, it becomes our comfort zone, because it's just where we are. And whenever that changes, that's hard. You think about any changes that come about, especially general changes, everybody stops and waits. Wait, we can't do that. We can't do that. And we find justification for not doing it. But anyway, that's what stands in the way. We stand in our own way in that regard. Number 4, at what point do we typically cease striving to become more or different, to become more than we are, or different than we are? At what point do we stop? Typically. What? When we start. The problem is when we start dying, but we don't usually see that, do we? We don't see it that we're dying. It's like the stagnant water. When does it start becoming stagnant? When does the bread begin to mold? When does the bread begin to mold? When you see the mold, or did it start before that? That's right. By the time we realize that we are way down the road, like you said, in the bread, suddenly you realize, oh man, I don't want to eat that anymore. But that's the way in our lives too. Sometimes we're so far gone, after a while we say, oh man, it's too far back now. How do I get back? I think that's exactly right. Go ahead. Good. I think you're right. When we think we've got it accomplished, we'll stop. And that's usually when we start to lose. That's when we start dying. That's exactly what you're saying. When we stop progressing, we start dying. You're either moving forward or you're moving backward. That's why I said a while ago, there is no real plateau in life. You're either increasing or you're decreasing. That's just the way it is. And so the point at which we think we've got it made, we've got it accomplished, we don't need any more, that's when we begin to go. I think you're right on target, and I think that's a great statement. Number 5, what should we expect of ourselves and for ourselves as we become? What should we expect of ourselves as we're becoming, and what should we expect for ourselves as we're becoming? Does that make sense? Peace. That's good. That's good. And I think Paul kind of leans in that direction with that. Success. A feeling of accomplishment, if you will. And that's what I mean by success. I have done something. When I can look and see where I've been and where I am, then you don't measure yourself by somebody else's success. You measure by your own. That's where I was. Here's where I am. And be thankful for where I am. Should I be further than I am? Maybe so. But I am where I am. Okay. And you might see some of those failures along the way. Usually, a while ago you were up and down in life. That's generally where our life is. It's not just, it's usually, whoop, whoop. Although Charles Swindoll, was it 3 steps forward, 2 steps back in his little book? Yeah, hand. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, we're out of time. But no, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. That's a good point. Sometimes looking back, not to long for what we had in the past, but to see where we've been, how far we've come, can be very helpful to us in the sense of appreciating the growth we've made. And sometimes it may even spur us to do better than we have done. I can do it again. I don't know. I'm old. I can't do it again. But no, it's a very good point. Yes, you're right. It helps you and motivates you, and that's a very good point. Okay? Any other hands? No. Let's go to number 6. Consider the progression of the men who follow Jesus. All right, we follow their lives. In this case, we begin talking about the 2 brothers, Peter and Andrew. We look at James and John as well, but especially Peter and Andrew here. Consider the progression of the men who followed Jesus. How natural was their course to becoming what Jesus was calling them to be? How natural was their course in becoming what Jesus was calling them to be? And then when we get that in mind, what does this say to us? How natural was their course? That's right. This was basically, this is foreign to their many aspects of their lives. They were used to doing what they did, being these fishermen, had their boats, out working, and so forth. And now Jesus is calling them to be among people, to teach, and to share this message, and do things very different from what they've done. And that is going to be a difficult thing. Did they just grab hold of every bit and never have a problem along the way? No, they argued about a lot of things, about greatness and who was going to be first in the kingdom, and trying to stop Jesus from doing some of the things he was doing, and wondering, well, Lord, we don't have enough food to feed these people, send them away. No, you feed them. Okay, Lord, okay, just give them the food, spread it out there. A lot of things they were learning that were very different for them, and there were even times they were afraid to ask Jesus because it didn't seem to make sense to them along the way. So it was not just this, all right, I'm following Jesus, and away they go, and boom, and then suddenly 3 years later, or whatever it was, 3.5 or whatever years later, here they are. We're apostles. Let us stand up on Pentecost and tell you exactly how it's done. Even then, they weren't complete. Later, the Apostle Paul still having trouble with Gentiles becoming Christians. So, it's not just that natural progression. Well, what does that say to us? What does it say to us? Expect some failures. Somebody said that a while ago, didn't you? Expect some failures along the way. When I say failures, some setbacks. Failures may not be the best word, but setbacks. Okay, continue to persevere. There is a great reward. And that goes back to some of the things we quoted from Paul a little while ago. Okay. One last question, and then we're done. Whew. One last question. How will we know when we have become? When you die, okay. That's kind of depressing, isn't it? When you face the Lord, okay. That's okay. Can we not know it when in this life? Okay. Just because we become something doesn't mean we're finished. Yes, there is a completeness, and you're right. There is that completeness, and we stand before God with it. Paul says, I've finished the course. He's ready to go on and everything. But the idea, how will we know when we become? I think we were looking at it a while ago when you talk about looking back and you see the changes that have made in your life. And you say, that's what I was yesterday. Here's what I am today. Am I becoming? Yes. Every step along the way, you can see that. It's not the end of the journey, but it is the journey itself. Isn't that sweet? That is a good thing. Well, when you get to be 104, you ask me that question if I'm still around. I'll probably be extremely old by then. You ask me that question, I'll answer it for you. In the line of the song, only the good die young. No, that's great. I think if we look at life, I make fun, but if we look at life as a challenge and opportunities of things to accomplish in life, I think we can find things that we can do wherever we are, no matter how limited we may be in our lives. We may wonder, why am I still here? I've had people ask me that before. So I'm tired, I'm lonely, I don't know why I'm still here. But, you still have opportunity to deal with one, two, more, your family, whoever it might be. You never know. Okay? We're going to go any further with that, or is that it? It says up there. Oh, it actually says up there. Doesn't say on your sheet. Next week, Matthew 7, 21 through 27. You look at that and imagine what we might learn from that one for next week. And I'll give you the title then. How about that? Hey, I'm glad you're here this evening. Let's have a word of prayer and we'll dismiss our class. Dear God, our Father, again, we thank you for the time together. Help us to be those people who see our lives as we ought to see them, to see ourselves and to see what we can be. Challenge us, Father, with opportunity. Push us with every aspect of life around us that you can. Help us to become more what we need to be each and every day of our lives. And it is in Jesus we pray. Amen. Thank you much, guys.